How about that? Bo Sanders with a little religious humor. Hey, welcome back, Doug Pagitt Radio. We're talking with Robb Ryerse. Robb, you've written a book where you've tried to encourage people with your own story of metamorphosizing from fundamentalism into something else. And here's my big question for you. What do you call this new thing? I mean, the upside to being a fundamentalist or being an evangelical or being a mainliner or being a Catholic or a Buddhist, you get to have a name for it. It's hard for people because I think you would have said yourself to be a Christian previously. So when you say, okay, I've moved and I'm not a fundamentalist Christian anymore, how do you now describe yourself?
Yeah, I self-identify now as emergent.
Uh-huh.
And that is its own ball of wax.
It sure is. How do you use that in a sentence? Like when you say to somebody, like, how do you, I mean, I have the same problem. I have a very rich history with that tribe. And I don't know how to say it because it sounds weird to be like, well, now I'm an emerging Christian, because then it just feels so petty, right? Like, well, I was this kind, now I'm this kind. Like I used to root for the Vikings and now I, root for the Packers or something. Like, who cares if you're just moving sort of from one to the other? But it's more profound than that. How do you use it in a sentence?
The way we kind of describe it, and particularly at our church, the things that we talk about is like we talk about having a faith that is real and authentic, that lets you be who you really are. It doesn't force you to pretend like you've got all the answers. Having a faith that embraces doubt. We don't see doubt and faith as opposites. In fact, we think that doubt is the kind of thing that can help grow faith. We're trying to have a faith that is gracious and generous and ironic. It's simply kind to others. And especially those who, that we might disagree with. Or who are outside of what would normally be a part of our normal circles. I mean, it's amazing to me how Christians just are so mean sometimes.
Oh, interesting.
And that seems so contrary to the way of Jesus.
Yeah, in our little community here in Minneapolis, we were reading the book of Romans, which we're doing for our sermon, and we read chapter 14 this last week on Sunday. And it's really a very different book overall if you just read the whole thing and don't pull up verses out of it. Paul's still, the author's still a little nutty on some things, but it's much more kind and much more calling people to a kind of generosity. And Sidekick Victoria said during that sermon discussion time that in some ways the call in this ancient letter to early Christians was to be kind to each other when you disagree on things, and to be nice, and to take the other person's situation into account, and to not be always forcing your opinion on someone else. I mean, that's the heart of it. But I would imagine
what an absolutely crazy idea.
Yeah, isn't it funny? Right? So here's what strikes me. When you were, 19 or 20 or 23 years old and you were a pastor of a garb church, you would hear people talking like this. I'm sure you would hear people talking the way you talk right now. And you probably thought, oh, those people, they're just limp-wristed, soft, kind of, don't care about anything, not committed to anything kinds of people. Do you now feel like you're one of those people that you would have thought these things about in the past?
Yeah. I mean, my wife and I have had, we've had experiences like my wife put out on the internet her, in a particular issue how things have changed, and, for her own perspective, and she got a response from somebody, from our old circles, and the response was simply, "You need to read your Bible more." And it's like that's kind of the thing. Like there's kind of this whole approach that, if you don't believe the right thing, but that's obviously you don't either know the Bible or study it enough, or love it like you should.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like that's the way people have rolled their eyes at us and said, well, you don't really know the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Well,
or I had a woman send me, an email that was a whole list of verses, one rather, as if I, thought through those.
Right, right. Maybe
and
you haven't seen this.
It's striking to me here, listening to you and having read some of your book, that it really almost has that kindness in some ways has to be beaten out of us. It's not the natural response. If somebody's hurting, for most of us, the natural response is to want to come close to them, to be near them and to help them, right? And so to go through this public or corporate act of shunning someone isn't natural. I don't think we're really built to be that way. And so how is it that we beat ourselves out of our natural inclinations
Interesting. Yeah.
to come alongside somebody that we care about? And why? And I have to think that in communities where there is a pretty rigid set of, you're in the club if you believe these things, that nearly everybody at some point has to have doubts. So everybody on some level, I mean, maybe with the exception of a few people with extreme denial, we just can't believe that everybody is always certain all the time. And so there's a lot of hiding people in these communities.
Yeah, what a fantastic observation, Victoria. I think there's so much control in many fundamentalist churches, and it's so fierce that if somebody steps out of line, if somebody makes a choice that the community disagrees with, if somebody has a doubt, like that, it's this whole idea of like the slippery slope, that like as soon as you start down that, you're on the road to apostasy. As soon as you open up that door, you're inviting in all sorts of problems. And so it's so fear-based that you've got to keep everything, so buttoned down, lest, the evil, the apostasy, the heresy get introduced, and then it'll grow like a cancer and destroy the whole thing. That's kind of the mindset. Right. And so instead of loving someone, it's and putting your arm around them and encouraging them, kind of the mentality is that you've got to watch out for the community in the midst of it, and even if you have to sacrifice some people along the way, well, that's what you have to do.
So tell us a bit more about the book. What's the process you take people through on the in the book?
That's great. The book is not all deconstructive of fundamentalism.
Okay, good.
Because there's already been so much written that is deconstructive of kind of traditional creeds. I didn't want to write another book that's that. Yeah. And so the first section kind of tells my story. And what I try to do throughout the book, each chapter I tell a personal story from my life, and then tie that into some element of my process or what I believe. So it's very kind of narrative oriented, though not a straight line from point A to point Z. The first section of the book kind of deconstructs where I was. The second section of the book kind of answers the question, okay, now that I've left fundamentalism, what am I going to keep and what am I going to discard? Now that I've got all these pieces laying around, figure out what to hold on to and what to get rid of. And then the third section of the book, I describe kind of the shape my theology takes now. And what I suggest is that not all theology, not all beliefs that we believe are of equal importance, which is an observation that gets lost with fundamentalists. Believing in literal 7-day creationism is as important as believing that Jesus rose from the dead. And those two are of equal importance in so many fundamentalist churches. And so I suggest that there's it's not so much important what we believe, it's important how we believe. And that we kind of characterize and categorize in major, so we can major on the majors and minor on the minors, so that we can actually, we can actually remember what are the fundamentals of the faith. And so I suggest kind of the four areas that my faith now revolves around. the idea of community, the idea of story, of transformation and hope. And so my theology now revolves around those four things as being kind of the thing that pulls everything together with kind of a gravitational pull.
Well, Robb, thanks a lot. We appreciate your willingness to be on the show and to tell us about it. People can get the books all over. They can get it at your website. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. RobbRyerse.com and CivitasPress.com. Or it's on Amazon as well, and Barnes and Noble. Great. You can BarnesandNoble.com and all those places.
Great, and we'll put it on the Doug Pagitt Facebook page as well. Hey, Robb, congratulations on the book, and thanks for being willing to share with us today.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Victoria, so much.
Take care, Robb.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's Robb Ryerse. Robb's book, might be of interest to a number of people who've been through very similar things. We're going to be back here in just a moment with the Right On segment that's coming out of the show. So stick with us here. If you're listening on Spreaker, roll over to the next show. If you're listening on the Ustream, roll over to the next video. If you're just listening live, just keep it coming on the Ustream feed. So.